All right. Well, good afternoon, all. I'm Tim Mannion with Election Trust, and with us today are John Bodine and Tom Thomas. And we'd just like to thank you again for the opportunity to serve Ocean Pines with your election here. And we're looking forward to going through this process of adjudicating ballots and getting you your results. It's been our pleasure working with all of you up to this point, and we appreciate the opportunity. So with that, Tom Piatti, anything that you'd like to mention before we turn it over to Tom Thomas and get going on the process here?
No, as we previously discussed, when the tabulation is complete, we'll mute the mics. You can text me the results. I will populate the totals, the menu board, and we'll go live again and show it to the audience.
Very well. All right. Well, with that, let me introduce Tom Thomas then, and he can take us through the adjudication of the ballots.
Perfect. Thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you again very much for your time, your attendance, and your interest and support in this election process. What I want to do is set context of how we got here, where we are, and what comes next. That way there's no surprises as we work through these next couple steps to close out your election. So thank you very much for your patience and your attention as I walk you through that. So where we started was we designed, printed, and mailed all ballots. We then collected ballots locally on site and through the U.S. Postal Service. The ballots that were collected on site were sent back via FedEx to Election Trust. All envelopes were then logged as received in our ballot tracker to ensure we can give voter credit. Those folks that we have emails available were sent e-receipts. There was a large number of people that didn't have emails and or had invalid emails, so they didn't receive an e-receipt. We then closed the polls. And then as of yesterday, we went through essentially the final three steps leading into today. And those final three steps were: number one, using our automated slicer, open all envelopes for ballot extraction. Step two, extracted all ballots from the envelopes to ensure the envelopes contain valid ballots, because in some cases they did not. They were simply just a piece of paper or other with no ballot intact. And then last but not least, we then scanned all the ballots into our clear ballot system and prep for the adjudication process today. So where we are right now is we have a digital copy and a paper copy of every ballot that has been returned in compliance with the election guidelines set forth by the committee. What we're going to do next is the following. We're going to first review all blank ballots, because there are some ballots that the machine was not able to read because it is a machine. And because of that, we're going to, as humans, look at those blank ballots and then with the election committee agree, are these voted or unvoted selections per candidate? That's step number one. Step number two, there was a handful of ballots that we will call were less than ideal in the return process, whether it was wrinkled, ripped, torn, cut apart, came back in subsections. For example, we had one ballot that actually was just only 1/3 of the piece of paper. The other 2/3 were removed by the voter. So we need, as a collection committee, to go through those ballots and then, like the blank ballots, agree what are valid votes and what are just marks or other that should not be counted. With those two steps done, which will go fairly quickly, the third step is we look at overvotes. Any ballot that came in that the machine believes more selections were made than were supposed to be made, i.e. who voted for 4 instead of the expected 3 candidates. And when we do that, we can ensure that the machine read it correctly and adjust if and where appropriate, i.e. somebody filled in the bubble, but then they X'd it out and the machine couldn't tell the difference. The fourth step is we look at undervotes. We look at what are votes that were check marks, X's. It's when the bubble wasn't completely filled and the machine has flagged them as things to look at and adjudicate to ensure all credit is being given appropriately. At that point, we're essentially done. We'll do a quick review to make sure we didn't miss anything along the way. And if everything looks good to the election committee, we'll go ahead and close out the meeting and prep for the final report and tallying. Any questions about where we were, what we just did, and what we're going to do today?
Now, how about visually looking at what you're doing, Tom?
Yeah, I'm going to visually share my screen, and you're going to see every single step, and you're actually going to with my assistants, tell me, based on what you see on your screen, what is valid and invalid. And then we're going to together visually make those changes. So
Perfect.
when you're ready, I'll go ahead and do my screen share. But before I go to there, just want to make sure we have aligned context of where we were, where we are, and where we're going next. And we'll slow down and walk through each one of these steps again. But I wanted to have that high level roadmap before we got the car out of the garage and started driving.
Okay, we're ready.
Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen then. Give me just a second to get that open. And share my screen. All right, you should now see my screen. Tim, do you see my screen?
Yeah, you look good, Tom.
Perfect.
Yeah,
All
we're
right,
looking,
so
we're looking
where-
at your dashboard.
perfect. So as I mentioned, what we've done is we've went and scanned the ballots. We scanned them into 61 batches. And from the 61 batches, there was 2,981 ballots. Of those 2,981, 14 need to be adjudicated because the machine couldn't tell because it was ripped, torn, mutilated. And then there were 18 of those 2,981 that it were deemed blank because the ink was too light, the bubble wasn't filled in enough, or some other mechanism. So we're going to do those first. And then again, we're going to the undervotes and overvotes, but let's do this one piece at a time. So number one, let's go look at the blank ballots. So this is the first ballot. And as you can see, I believe in my mind, there are check marks on this ballot. So let's go ahead and click into it. And do you agree there are votes on this ballot that we need to account for?
Yes, yes,
I'm going
yes.
to modify the adjudication. I'm going to mark this as a votable ballot and vote it. And I believe it is Jonathan, Elaine, and Jeff. Does that look correct to you?
Correct, correct.
Go ahead and save that. So those are now marked in green. That ballot has now been adjudicated. So I'm going to go ahead and close this screen. I'm going to go to the next one. I'll go ahead and click into this. I do not see any votes on this ballot. Do you agree?
Correct, correct.
Go ahead and skip this ballot and go to the next one. I do see votes on this one, so I'm going to click into it. I'm going to go ahead and modify the vote because right now it's not catching these check marks because it's not a filled in bubble. I'm going to go ahead and vote this ballot. And I believe it looks like John, Jerry, and Jeff. Does that look correct to you?
Correct.
I'll go ahead and save those changes. And we now have John, Jerry, and Jeff marked for this ballot. I go to the next ballot. It also looks votable, so I'm going to click into it. I'm going to go ahead and modify the adjudication. I'm going to mark it as vote. And it looks like it's Elaine and Jeff. Do you agree?
Agree, agree.
I'm marking that as a voted ballot. So it's now Elaine and Jeff will get credit. I'm closing this window and going to the next one. Although it's a little hard to tell, it looks like it could be votable. So let's open it up to zoom in. It looks like we do have some really faint check marks. Do you agree that there's
Yes.
the voter kind of put a little tick there in the bottom corner? So I'm going to mark this as a votable ballot. And it looks like it's Jerry, Elaine, and Jeff. Do you concur?
Agree, agree.
Go ahead and save it. Go ahead and go to the next ballot. And is this process making sense to you before I go much further?
Perfect sense.
Perfect. And again, all we're doing, to be clear for everybody in the audience, is we're telling the machine and validating what we as humans believe was the voter intent, that it is correctly not making the decision for us. So it's decided for us on the ones that are obvious, but it's letting us as humans decide the ones that are not. This looks a votable ballot, so I'm going to mark it as such. I see John, Elaine, and Jeff. Do you concur?
Sure.
Go ahead and save. That ballot has now been recorded. We'll go to the next one. This one also looks votable. And I'm taking these as a let me go ahead and get it into vote mode. I'm taking that as John, Elaine, and Jeff, the lines I believe to be their intent of voting for those candidates. Do you concur?
Concur.
Go ahead and save. Go to the next one. And this looks like a votable ballot again. It's just kind of a small check marks kind of hanging off to the sides there. So again, although a little, so I'm going John, Jerry, and Elaine. Do you concur?
Concur.
Okay, that one has been voted. And again, much like the last one, it's check marks, so it's faint lines, but they are voter intent. So it looks like John, Jerry, and Elaine again. Concur?
Concur.
Okay, that's been saved. And it looks like we have, again, some more X's and checks. It looks like it is John, Elaine, and Jeff this time. Do you concur?
Concur.
That has been saved. Next one. It looks like we got some X's again. And it looks like it is John and Jeff. Do you concur?
Concur.
That's been saved. Next one. So we got some check marks again. It's votable. And it looks like it's Jerry, Elaine, and Jeff. Does that look good?
Concur.
Perfect. And number 3, looks like we got some check marks again. And John, Jerry, Elaine. Do you concur?
Concur.
All right, go ahead and save that. On to the next one. We're almost there on these. This does not look like a votable ballot. Do you agree?
Agree.
The voter intent was to just cross all of them out, so we will not change this ballot. It'll leave it as blank. This does look like there was voter intent, so I'm going to go ahead and vote this one. So my interpretation of that is both Jerry and Elaine. Do you concur?
Concur.
And I'm marking both Jerry and Elaine as the candidate's intent. I'm hitting save. That has been recorded. And going on to ballot number 16. Looks like we have intent again. It's votable. And it looks like Jerry, Elaine, and Jeff. Do you concur?
Concur.
And save that ballot. We go to ballot number 17. And it looks like there's intent. So I will open that up. We'll modify it. And it looks like Jerry, Elaine, and Jeff. Do you concur?
Concur.
Go ahead and save that. And ballot number 18. And I can't tell if it's our intent or not, so I'm going to open it up. This truly looks like a blank ballot. So in this case, I'm leaving it no votes selected. Do you concur?
Concur.
Right, so we'll not change the vote on that ballot. I'm going to close this. I'm going to refresh this page. And this 18 will now be reduced because we have changed several of those ballots per your advice. So there are now 3 blank ballots. I'm going to go ahead and say that step is complete and move on to the next step if you agree.
Agree.
What we're going to do next is the unreadables. These were ballots that were torn, ripped, essentially call them destroyed for one reason or another. So they've also been flagged. It's the exact same process. We're just going to go through them one by one, and we will adjudicate them on a case-by-case basis. So we'll start here at number 1. This does look like a votable ballot, so I'm going to go ahead and mark it as vote. Inside. 1 second here. 10, vote it. Right, it looks like it is John, Elaine, and Jeff. Does that look correct? Do you concur?
Correct.
All right, go ahead and save that. That ballot has now been resolved. Let's go to the next one. So here again, this is a great example. As you can see, there's literally a giant chunk of the ballot has been missing off the middle, and a giant chunk of the ballot is missing off the top, which is why the computer has flagged it as a human being needs to review it and validate it as a ballot. I'm going to go ahead and mark this as votable, because I believe the voter's intent is to vote it, and I believe the voter's intent was to vote for Jerry. Do you concur?
Concur.
Save that ballot. It is now will be counted. And this also looks like it was intended to be a voted ballot. I believe they intended John, Jerry, and Jeff. Do you concur?
Concur.
Save that. And we're just going to work our way right down this list here. So the case with this one is you'll notice the bottom of the ballot is missing. So again, the voter submitted 2/3 of the paper and for whatever reason ripped off the bottom third. So I believe this also to be a votable ballot. So let's record the voter's intent. And in this case, I believe they intended John, Jerry, and Jeff. Do you concur?
Sure.
And same thing as the last one. They basically ripped off the bottom portion of the ballot. And it looks like it was just Jeff. Do you concur?
Concur.
And again, they ripped off the bottom. Actually, for this one, they ripped off the top and the bottom of the ballot. So they sent just the 1/3 panel in the middle. But I believe their intent is still recordable. So we will go ahead and vote this ballot. It was John, Jerry, and Elaine. Do you concur?
Concur.
And again, they ripped the bottom of the ballot off. And I believe it is John, Jerry, and Jeff. Do you concur?
Concur.
Couple more to go here, folks. And again, another great example of, again, you can kind of see where the paper is literally crumpled up. Corner was ripped off the side of it. So again, top was ripped off, but it is still a very votable ballot. I think there's very clear intent of what the voter intended to vote. So we will go ahead and mark this as votable and record their intent. I believe it was John, Jerry, and Elaine. Do you concur?
Concur.
Save that ballot. This one, yeah, again, the top corner was ripped off, but it is still a votable ballot. So we'll mark it as such. John, Jerry, and Elaine, do you concur?
Concur.
Save that ballot. And this one, again, at the bottom, for whatever reason, got ripped off, but it is still a votable ballot. Go ahead and vote this. I see John, I see Jerry, I see Jeff. Do you concur?
Concur.
You. Just a couple left here. You can't quite tell, but it looks like this one was taped back together. So and got a chunk missing out of the top as well. But it is a votable ballot, so we will mark it as such. We will record the voter's intent. I see John, I see Jerry, I see Elaine. Do you concur?
Sure.
3 ballots on this section. Again, looks like there's some destruction across the top of the ballot. And it looks like it was Jerry, Elaine, and Jeff. Do you concur?
Sure.
Save those votes. And Again, we got some folding here in the bottom corner. I think it is clear the voters' intent was John, Elaine, and Jeff. Do you concur?
Concur.
And last one of this section. Again, we got some destruction up here at the top of the ballot, but we can definitely see the voters' intent. So we mark it as a votable ballot. Is that for me, Tom, or the other Tom?
I think the echo is coming off the conference room that Tom Piatti's in. Tom, it sounds like there's two channels open at the same time.
Right, just didn't know they were asking me a question or the other Tom a question.
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, so I marked this one as John, Elaine, and Jeff. Do you concur?
Concur.
All right, saving that. And there are no unresolved cards at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and close this window. Refresh the screen. And you now see we have 3 blank ballots as we agreed, and there are no ballots that are destroyed. So what we're going to do next is we're going to dig into the overvotes. So we'll go to the statements of votes cast. This will not expose who has won the election. It's simply going to show you on a ballot by ballot basis the kinds of marks. So across the ballots, only 2 voters out of the entire set had voted for more than 3 selections, which is really good. Your voters followed the instructions quite well. So thank you for that. It makes this process fast. I'm going to click into the overvotes. And there are 2 ballots. This is the first one. So I'm going to click into it. And it's, in my opinion, the fact that it says not Jerry with an X and a fill-in bubble is the intent of not voting for Jerry. Do you agree?
Agree.
Hey, Tom,
Yes,
I need to interrupt for a second. I need you to go in and make sure that the totals are not exposed as we finish up this process.
I believe
Disable display totals.
yeah, that's right there. Display vote totals is enabled. So flip this to disabled.
Correct. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I get these all expanded to be sure. All right, so we're on Ocean Pines. Display vote totals is disabled. Okay, good. Come on, Zoom. Get back to where I was. Just a second here. Sorry, Zoom pop over. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and modify this ballot. I'm going to vote it. I'm going to deselect Jerry, making this a valid ballot. So it is only going to have votes for John, Elaine, and Jeff. Do you concur? I believe that is the voter's intent. I'm going to go ahead and save that. That has been adjudicated. The other one is this one here. There's a big X across it. I believe it is very likely the same thing, but let's go look to be sure. My interpretation is the fact they put an X through just that one and filled in the other bubbles is the intent of not voting for Elaine. Do you agree?
Concur.
I'll go ahead and adjust that ballot. I'm going to deselect Elaine, and I'm going to save it with just John, Jerry, and Jeff as the voter's intent. Do you concur?
Concur.
And go ahead and exit that. Refresh the screen. So there are now 0 ballots that have been overvoted. All ballots have 3 or less selections upon them, as the voter's intent was. So where I want to go to next is I want to start digging into, go up a level here and refresh the screen, make sure we're showing all the zeros. So again, there's no overvotes. I now want to dig into the undervotes. So we're going to go through the 4 races. And what this is going to do is it's going to show us ones that could be a vote, but the machine wasn't quite sure. So these up here are all votes. So it marked all these X's, these checks, all these ones have been counted correctly. The questions, though, all look blank. All look blank. So I'm not seeing any of these on my screen that have any hint at really a voter mark. Do you agree?
Agree.
Okay, we're going to go back up. We're going to go into Cherry Murphy. Again, same process, watching for marks that could be deemed as the computer not reading it. But thus far, this has got a little bit of a smudge, but that does not look like a vote to me. That looks like just a smudge on the paper. Okay, so that one is also clean. Going to click into Elaine, and Elaine, I do believe we started seeing some check marks. So let's start going through some of these. So for this one, the machine only recorded John. I believe that Elaine and Jeff were intended to be voted for. Do you agree?
Agree.
Go ahead and modify this ballot. Vote. I'm going to add a vote for Elaine and a vote for Jeff, and I'm going to save this. Do you concur?
Concur.
I want to look at this one. So this one, it's definitely John. It's definitely Jeff. Do you believe they intended to vote for Elaine, or did they change their mind? What is your
Yes.
opinion?
They intended to.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and change this vote to include Elaine. So Elaine is now being considered a choice of the voter. I'm going to save. Do you concur?
Concur.
Okay, that one has been accounted for. I'm going to go look at this one. So this was the big X across the whole paper, so that's not a vote for anybody. Lots of white space. Okay. Go back up a level. Go into Jeff. Okay, so this one definitely looks like it has a check. So let's go look at it. So that looks like they intended to vote for Elaine and Jeff based on the way the marks are. So I'm going to open that up. I believe there was intent to vote for Jeff. Do you concur?
Concur.
Go ahead and save. That has been adjudicated. That's just text across the whole page. These are all blank. Okay, so let's go ahead and zoom back out here for just a second. And I'm going to go in one more time. I'm going to blow this out to 3,000 ballots. So this is going to take just a second. We're going to look at all the ballots at one time now that we've looked at the obvious ones. And what's going to just going to show us all the marks across all the ballots. So as you can see, lots and lots of voters were very good at filling in the bubbles completely. Second to finish. I want to look at that one that's got this X. So this one, it looks like they filled it and X'd it. I believe the intent was to vote for these candidates. Do you concur?
Concur.
Otherwise, it's a blank ballot. And I doubt that was the voter's intent. All the rest of these are good solid fills. Let's go take a look at this one. Again, I think it's the same intent. They X'd it and filled it. I think the intent was to vote for the candidates. Do you concur?
Concur.
Again, it feels like they were going to X, but they filled them in instead. I think that's a valid mark. Do you concur?
Concur.
We looked at this one already. Yep, those were X's. Oops, sorry. Mouse is a little bit hypersensitive. All look pretty clearly marked as filled in circles to me. This one is the only candidate marked, so I'm pretty sure that that was the candidate's intent. Again, they started X's, but then they filled them all in, so I think that is capturing the intent correctly. It's the only candidate. Got all of them. And then just X's and check marks. Okay, there's no overvotes. Sort this for uncaptured intent. Actually, sort for marks only, ovals only. Because what it's going to say is looking for things that. So again, what we're looking for is making sure there's no marks in any of the bubbles that the computer had not accounted for. And thus far, I'm seeing pretty clearly all of these are empty bubbles, no voter intent yet. Do you concur? And I will go through all of them. Just want to make sure that
We're watching.
And if I skim past anything, by all means, stop me. But so far, it's been pretty clear these are not votes as recorded. Okay, and again, one additional view. Okay, everything looks empty. I'm not seeing anything in here that should be marked as a vote. So I think we have all votes accounted for John. Let's go look at Jerry. Same process. We're gonna look at all 3,000 ballots. And as you can imagine, this is much faster than taking 3,000 sheets of paper and trying to flip through them one at a time and have your eyes strained. So I do appreciate your patience. And we are almost to the end of the process. Give it just a second to load up. And our target was to be about 30 minutes, so we're right on schedule, actually. We're doing really good on time. So thank you, everybody, for your time, your interest, and your patience as we make sure we account for all candidates' votes cast. Should be just about done. Okay, that was just one candidate. I believe that's a correct mark. I believe those are correct marks. And again, I'm just looking for things that were inadvertently X'd out, but the computer thought were not, like we did with the overvotes earlier. But so far, again, they X'd all of them and filled them all, saying those are all counted. These are pretty clearly marked bubbles. That's all marked. These are just X's because that's the way they voted. That's the way they voted. You know, X's, check marks. These all look like valid votes to me. Do you agree? Everything here looks valid votes?
Agree.
Okay, there's no overvotes. Sort for uncaptured intent. Just a second to resort. And much like the last candidate, we can go through this just one last time. And sort for marks and ovals only. Okay, so again, we're looking for marks that should have been counted. So watching for things that are not empty. That just this looks like it's just somebody. Yep, that's the big X across the page. That's again, they definitely voted for Elaine, bleeding into Jerry. This is again, they voted for Elaine, bleeding towards Jerry. And thus far, I'm not seeing anything jumping out yet that says it's not counted a vote that should have been counted. So again, this is the same as scanning through all 3,000 ballots real time and looking for anything that a human being would have not counted inadvertently. But thus far, the machine has done a really nice job of marking intent. All right, same process, different view. Again, just watching for marks. Everything thus far looks pretty empty. Yeah, that's just a scribble off to the side. And that's it, right? We've gone through this entire, all the Jerry ones have been accounted for. Last two. Same process one last time. And again, just want to go through all 3,000 ballots and make sure nobody has been missed. Any questions about the process thus far? Is it making sense?
Makes great sense. It's very thorough,
Perfect.
indisputable.
We appreciate your patience. And again, I promise you this is much faster than counting the ballots by hand and much more accurate, without a doubt. All right, looks like it's loaded. And that's just a really big mark. This one against just the way they voted. It's just the way they voted. It's the way they voted. They all got X's, so I believe those are valid counts. That's the way they voted, valid counts. And then just watching for things that were X'd out that shouldn't have been. That was the way they voted. Check marks. Looks like those are all valid votes. And again, really nice job on your voters' part of making these markings very clear and legible for us to adjudicate. It's highly appreciated. That looks like they intended to vote for all three. Do you agree?
Agree.
Because that's the way it's recorded right now. And that one's just the one candidate. Those are just X's. And that looks like they intended to vote for all three. Do you concur?
Sure.
And the rest are just X's and checks and, random. And then we'll go through the non-votes. So sort for uncaptured intent. Sort for the ovals only. We're just about there. Okay, so this one, again, that's the one that they didn't vote for anybody. Do you concur?
Concur.
And it's just writing, and again, watching for things that should be marked. But thus far, these all look pretty clearly empty bubbles. All right, and then same information, different view. These all look empty. I think we have accounted for all Elaine votes. Do you agree?
Agree.
Okay, let's go ahead and last one. Same process. Look up all ballots. Okay, give it a second to load up. Okay, that one looks like is intended to vote. Come on. Okay, give it just another second here. Should be getting close. That one's intended to vote. That one intended to vote. Again, we're just watching for things that were X's. Okay, that one again, I believe is intended to vote because they're all X'd and filled. What is your thoughts on this one? Did they intend to vote for Jeff and Elaine or just Elaine?
I think they intended to vote on for both.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and then that's what's recorded. It's recorded as both right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave that one selected. And again, that look like the intent is all of them. And that's just a big X. So just again, X's, check marks, other ways of filling in bubbles. We'll sort the blanks and then we'll be done with this. So we're almost there. Last mile. All right, so I think this one we've looked at before. Again, it's just the big X across the paper. And again, watching for votes that were not counted, but I believe these are all going to be blank bubbles. But we will go through it for completeness and accuracy. That's just content reading on the ballot. Lane was already selected, not Jeff. And then the same information, a different view. Yep, I think we've accounted for all Jeff votes. Do you agree?
Agree.
All right, so let's go ahead and close this, refresh this page. And just to reiterate, there are 3 ballots that were essentially no votes made at all. We have adjudicated all unreadable ballots because they had rips, torn, cut off, etc. And your final ballot tally is 2,981 voted ballots will be tallied when we are ready to do so. But at this point, that is the end of the adjudication process. All that is left is to reveal the results. And I believe you wanted to dismiss the audience and do that independently. Is that correct?
Yes, what we're going to do is Tim is going to text me the totals. I will total them up here. We will go back on and broadcast it.
Okay, so I can go ahead and stop sharing.
Okay, so Tom Thomas, let's have you and I go on mute and we can connect over on Teams and we can make sure that I've got the right numbers to share with Tom Piatti.
Perfect. I will put myself on mute and I will be right back with you, Mr. Mannion. Thank you very much. Any questions before we go on mute, anybody? Is the process clear and understanding of how we've gotten to where we are?
We understand.
Perfect. Thank you again. We'll be right back.
Yeah, Tom.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here are the totals. John Latham, 2,237. Jerry Murphy, 1,460. Elaine Brady, 2,293. Jeff Heavner, 1,849. What that means is that John Latham and Elaine Brady will serve 3-year terms, and Jeff Heavner will serve 1 year, which is the remaining term of previous director Frank Daly. Thank you very much.